Hi everyone! Today's video will be me talking through my first ever experience with gouache, from a perspective of a watercolorist, of course. Throughout this video, I'll be using Shinhan's Professional Designer's Gouache and Shinhan Pass, which is their hybrid watercolor gouache range. I'll talk more about where I got these later on. The colors I chose was definitely influenced by this video from Sarah Burns, but I feel like I should explain some of my color choices. Since this is me getting to know a new medium, I really wanted to just start with a limited palette. My default is to go with a cyan, magenta, yellow trio, which Shinhan definitely has, but instead I chose lemon yellow made with PY3, primary magenta made with PR81, and cobalt turquoise made with PB28. Most primary cyans use PB15, which is phthalo blue, but I've always felt like cobalt turquoise visually looks more similar to the cyan we see in these types of color diagrams, so I've always wanted to try it out. My second reason is that Shinhan's PWC watercolor range doesn't have a true cobalt turquoise color. They do have a turquoise blue light, but it's not as vibrant as what you would get with a cobalt turquoise that uses the true cobalt pigment. So if you're someone who uses Shinhan PWC watercolors like me and wished they had a cobalt turquoise, check this one out. I highly recommend it. And then of course we have to have black and white to lighten or darken mixes. I also decided on an ultramarine blue as well because I feel like sometimes black could be a bit too harsh and deadly, whereas ultramarine blue is a great mixer, muter, and all-round versatile color. My first initial squeeze of all the colors were very nice. All of them were creamy and uniform with the exception of black. There was a tiny bit of binder separation, but not a big deal as I can easily just mix it back in. Since I'm a beginner with gouache, it took me a while to figure out how much or how little water I needed for each color. The consistency was so creamy and so smooth, I had a lot of fun just swatching out the colors straight from the tube. I was quite surprised that not all of them completely covered the black lines. However, this may just be due to my own error as I was still figuring out paint to water ratios. I also came to learn later on that each color's opacity may differ slightly. After just an initial test swatch, I discovered that my brush cleaning water is a lot more cloudy than if I were using watercolors. It's neither good nor bad, it's just something new that I didn't think I'd expect. I then left the gouache to dry for a couple days and most of them held up well. They're all completely dry and stuck to my ceramic palette. The white one did break off, but the rest of the colors stayed on firmly. I also wanted to do the re-wet opacity test, which I think I also still need to figure out more. I dropped some water into each well and left them to soak for a bit. This top row here are the swatches after re-wetting the gouache. Despite my inexperience, I think they came out just as opaque as the swatches fresh from the tube. After that, I wanted to see what kind of mixes I could get. And as useful as the regular pie diagram is, I wanted to take a different approach by just freely playing around and having fun. While this might look like a chaotic mess, I think it might be a fun exercise for some of you, so let me walk you through it. I started with my yellow, mixed it with my magenta, and then swatched some mixes from that row with either black or white. And then mixed the magenta and cobalt turquoise, again adding white or black in the column to its right. And then magenta with ultramarine blue. Then towards the bottom here, I mixed the respective blue with yellow. I think I much prefer the mix with cobalt turquoise as it's so vibrant and so bright. Perfect for my illustrative style. And then I was really drawn to several of the pastel tints, so I tried mixing white with various mixes already on the palette. I think they turned out so beautifully. And then of course, I have to try the gouache with a real painting. I bought a set of these line art drawings a while back, so I chose a simple bouquet to start with. I absolutely love how fast gouache dries. To be honest, it was one of the properties that drew me to wanting to try gouache in the first place, because All this time I've been painting with watercolor, I've always felt antsy needing to wait for a layer to dry. But with gouache, I can just keep painting. And even if something dried too fast, I can easily add a bit of water and I can manipulate it again. I also discovered pretty quickly that there's quite the drying shift, which I'll definitely need more experience with in order to get used to it. Although gouache is traditionally known to be used by artists to create solid, flat colors in design work and illustrations, I love the effect gouache can create when I don't mix colors thoroughly. It gives a bit of organicity to the art piece. All in all, I think the main couple things I like about gouache is that it dries quickly and I don't need to worry about painting too dark, as I can easily correct it by layering. I also really like the various pastel tints you can get with gouache, so I think I'm going to get myself a couple of those to add to my collection. If anyone has any specific suggestions for me, please let me know down in the comments below. And finally, a huge thank you to Shinhan and my local art store, Lamun, for gifting me these tubes of gouache to try for my first ever gouache experience. If any of you are in Thailand or will be visiting Thailand, check out the Lamun store. I'll leave their details down below. Some of you might know that I actually got a set of Winsor&Newton gouache to try from Jackson's, but that brand is no longer available to me. So I didn't even want to try it at all if I wasn't going to be able to get more in the future. So I found Shinhan, a brand more accessible to myself. And I'm so happy that I did because this was such an enjoyable first experience. I definitely see more gouache experimentation in my near future. And that's all I have for you today. As always, thank you so much for watching, everyone. Don't forget to drink lots of water and stay hydrated.